The United States Senate, often regarded as a deliberative body slow to react, suddenly found itself at the center of a national storm. In a move that caught many by surprise, senators from both sides of the aisle came together to challenge the White House's aggressive trade agenda. The chamber stunned the nation by voting to block President Donald Trump's controversial tariffs, a decision that sent shockwaves through Washington and beyond. For years, these tariffs had been the cornerstone of Trump's America First policy, sparking global disputes, igniting trade wars, and dividing Americans along political and economic lines. The president argued they protected American jobs, but critics warned of rising costs and international backlash. The Senate's move was a rare public rebuke. Members of Trump's own party joined Democrats, signaling a dramatic shift in the balance of power and a willingness to challenge the president's authority. Suddenly, the president's grip on trade policy looked vulnerable. The message was clear. Congress would no longer be a rubber stamp for executive decisions that affected millions of Americans. For farmers and small business owners hurt by retaliatory tariffs, the Senate's action offered hope. Many had watched their livelihoods threatened as foreign markets closed and costs soared. For Trump loyalists, however, it felt like betrayal, a sign that even allies could turn against the president's vision when the stakes were high. This wasn't just a policy disagreement, it was a dramatic power struggle over the nation's economic future, with both sides fiercely defending their vision for America. Over several tense days, senators from both parties chipped away at Trump's tariff wall, forging a fragile but real bipartisan consensus that few thought possible in such a polarized era. The story had become bigger than tariffs. It was now about who truly controls America's economic destiny, and whether the nation's future would be shaped by one man's vision or by the collective will of its elected representatives. To truly grasp the Senate's bold move, it helps to start with the basics. At the heart of the debate is something called a tariff, a word you've probably heard in the news, but what does it really mean? A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. Imagine Canadian steel or Chinese electronics arriving at a US port. Before those products hit American shelves, a fee is added. The importer, usually a business, pays a percentage of the product's value as a tax. This makes foreign products more expensive, which can give an edge to American-made goods by making them more attractive to buyers. Tariffs are often used to protect local jobs and industries, especially in sectors like steel, manufacturing, or agriculture, where foreign competition can be fierce. But there's a catch. Tariffs also tend to raise prices for everyday consumers. When businesses pay more to import goods, they usually pass those extra costs along to shoppers. That means families might notice higher prices on everything from cars and washing machines to groceries and electronics, making household budgets stretch a little further. Tariffs can also spark international tensions. If the US taxes Chinese steel, for example, China might retaliate by taxing American soybeans or other exports, creating a cycle of back-and-forth penalties. This tit-for-tat escalation is known as a trade war, and it can have serious consequences, hurting exporters, closing factories, and costing American jobs. While tariffs do bring in revenue for the government, their ripple effects can lead to higher prices, economic uncertainty, and even market volatility, affecting everything from Wall Street to Main Street. So when the Senate took action, it wasn't just about taxes or trade policy, it was about the real-world impact on American wallets, jobs, and the broader economy. The Senate, not the Supreme Court, took center stage in challenging Trump's tariffs. In late October 2025, senators narrowly voted to block key tariffs, directly confronting the president's use of emergency powers. The votes were razor-thin, revealing deep divisions, but also political courage. What made headlines was the bipartisan nature of the revolt. 4 Republican senators, McConnell, Collins, Murkowski, and Paul, joined Democrats. Their states had been hit hard by tariffs, from Kentucky's bourbon to Maine's lobster. This alliance sent a clear message: opposition to the trade war had crossed party lines. The cracks in Trump's support were now visible at the highest levels. Even Senate Leader McConnell broke ranks, citing the damage to Kentucky's farms. The Senate's defiance was a major blow to the president's trade agenda. The political landscape had shifted, and the White House could no longer ignore the growing backlash. The Senate targeted tariffs Trump had imposed on Canada, Brazil, and China. each with its own backstory. Canadian tariffs were especially controversial, justified by a supposed fentanyl crisis, though data showed little evidence. Critics saw this as an excuse to pressure a close ally, risking a $900 billion trade relationship. Tariffs on Brazil disrupted another key partnership, while the China dispute was the largest, rooted in accusations of unfair trade practices. Trump's sweeping tariffs on Chinese goods aimed to force policy changes and bring manufacturing back to the U.S. The result, a full-blown trade war, with China retaliating against American exports. These moves embodied Trump's America First doctrine, using tariffs as leverage to rewrite global trade rules. The message was clear: America would fight back against what it saw as unfair trade, no matter the cost. The tariff debate split the nation. Supporters, including Trump and many Republicans, saw tariffs as a way to protect American jobs and industries from unfair foreign competition. They argued tariffs would bring manufacturing back and reduce the trade deficit, a patriotic stand for economic sovereignty. Opponents, a coalition of Democrats, some Republicans, and business leaders, called tariffs a hidden tax on American families. They pointed to higher prices and lost export markets as evidence that tariffs hurt more than they helped. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries hit U.S. farmers and manufacturers hard, costing jobs and disrupting supply chains. Critics argued that global trade required cooperation, not trade wars that isolated America. The Senate's revolt reflected growing doubts about whether tariffs were helping or hurting the country. The trade war's impact was felt in homes across the country, touching the lives of millions of Americans in ways both big and small. On farms and in rural communities, the effects were especially harsh. Everyday items, electronics, clothes, furniture, and even groceries became noticeably more expensive as importers passed tariff costs to consumers. Families found themselves paying more for the same essentials, stretching every dollar further. For low and middle-income families, these price hikes hit especially hard, forcing tough choices at the checkout line and making it harder to put food on the table. Already tight budgets were pushed to the breaking point, with many families cutting back on non-essentials or dipping into savings just to get by. American businesses that relied on imported parts faced higher costs, shrinking profit margins, and difficult decisions about layoffs, or even closing their doors. The uncertainty rippled through local economies. Farmers, however, suffered most of all. China, once a top buyer of U.S. soybeans, retaliated with tariffs, turning to other suppliers. Crop prices plunged. Unsold grain piled up in silos, and many family farms faced bankruptcy, foreclosure, or the heartbreak of auctioning off land that had been in the family for generations. The crisis was so severe that it pushed some Republican senators to break with President Trump, prioritizing the needs and voices of their constituents over party loyalty, and demanding action to protect American livelihoods. Even when a new trade deal with China was announced, it brought only cautious hope. Many farmers and business owners remained skeptical, having seen promises broken before and knowing recovery would take time, if it came at all. The scars of the trade war ran deep, leaving behind closed factories, abandoned equipment, and families struggling to make ends meet. These stories served as a powerful reminder that economic policy is never just about numbers, it's about real people, real jobs, and real communities. The Senate's action was fueled by these real-world consequences, as lawmakers grappled with the human cost of the trade war. Despite the Senate's dramatic votes, the reality is that change won't come quickly. The House, controlled by Trump's allies, has blocked anti-tariff bills from advancing. Even if a bill passed, Trump has vowed to veto anything limiting his tariff powers, and the Senate lacks the votes to override him. The Senate's move is symbolic, a protest meant to send a message, not enact immediate change. Still, the public rebuke increases pressure on the White House to negotiate, especially with allies like Canada. Trade policy is now a central issue for the next election, forcing candidates to take a stand. The Senate's defiance marks a turning point, exposing deep economic pain and fracturing party unity. The battle over America's economic future is far from over, and the world is watching.